Holy moly. Holy moly. Holy moly.
Awesome. Well, welcome everybody to How to Do Map Stuff Interactive Fantasy Map version. Hey, you cool cats and kittens, exactly. My name is Ross. I've been making maps now under sort of like the name Red Giant Maps for a little while. Mostly fantasy maps, pretty much actually all fantasy maps, all interactive fantasy maps, which has been a lot of fun and I've enjoyed it. It's a process and I've been learning myself, but it's been super cool. What that looks like is sort of, this is a map that I had made for actually a D&D campaign with my parents that we're going to do. And so I did a bunch of world building, but you're going to be able to learn, this is the process I'm going to go through today, is how I made a map that looks like this, how I made it interactive as well, and some cool stuff that you can do in QGIS and Mapbox to get to a product that's close to this. Just want to say thanks to all the great mapping presenters today. There's a great schedule. There's still more after me and still going on right now. So be sure, I linked below in one of the panels. So be sure to check that out. Lots of great knowledge for cartography. So to start off with, I'm going to be using QGIS 3.12.2. You know, you can easily do this in Arc as well. I just chose to use, you could do this all in ArcGIS and ArcGIS Online even. I just chose to use some open source stuff and some free stuff so that it's really accessible to folks. So QGIS, Mapbox account, and I'm going to be using Glitch to as my text editor and in-browsing rendering of the maps and stuff. So yeah, let's dive in, I guess. All right, so today I've got just a digital elevation model, some elevation data. I think it's from Southeast California. I think it's been a while since I actually looked at where it was from. But what we're gonna do is create our fantasy landmass, and I've done a tutorial on this before. It's super easy if you're not artistic, because I'm not artistic, and it takes a long time to create realistic looking boundaries. So what I did was I basically just flood some elevation data, and automatically you get some cool looking boundaries. So what we're gonna do is load in. So I've loaded in my raster data by going into the upper left-hand corner, raster, loading in my raster data set. It's kind of confusing. Some of these files are different. This is a ADF file, and I think I included this in like my Patreon link or something. This actual data set, and so what I'm clicking on is then this dblbnd double band .adf, and I add that, and I get this. So let's first start off by symbolizing this appropriately and sort of playing around with the landscapes that we create. So I'm going to go into properties here, and so what this is the symbology. And so I'm going into, I know there's a bunch of GIS folks in here, and there's also hopefully some people who have never used GIS stuff before. I've tried to advertise this for fantasy people alike as well to learn this. And I'm going to try to interact with chat a little bit and answer some questions if I can. But I'm going to go over things at a base level so that anyone without prior knowledge can know this. So I've opened up my properties for my elevation data. And what this does is it has minimum of 101.2, a maximum of 1430.73, and those are elevation levels. And it sort of interpolates in between there based on black and white to give you levels for each pixel. And so what we want to do is sort of take that away and make our own classes so that we can define what colors are going to be there. So I'm going to switch my render type to single band pseudo color. Which allows me to pick both the boundaries at which the colors change and what colors I want to use. So this is great. The interpolation, we actually want discrete boundaries, so that way we can actually make those hard boundaries. In the mode, I'm going to choose quantile, and I'm going to only choose 2 classes here because I only want to see what's going to be water and what's going to be land in our new landscape that we are creating, and no one can tell us what's right and wrong. And I'm going to choose blue, obviously, although it doesn't have to be blue. Yes, Tony RK, this will be uploaded later somewhere. It's definitely going to remain on my Twitch account for 30 days at least, and I think I'm going to be able to download it and then upload it to YouTube as well. I couldn't stream to both like I tried because apparently Twitch doesn't like it when you do that and you're an affiliate. So all right, so let's switch to a bluish hue, and yeah, I think that one looks good. And then we're gonna switch this to sort of like, I don't know, a brown or green, usually what I choose for land stuff. Tan, I like that tan. That is a nice tan. So right now this is QGIS. There's links below as well to both QGIS and to set up a Mapbox account. 2 things you'll need. Cool. So now I've made my 2 classes of what's going to be water and what's going to be land. Basically what this is saying is that everything that is less than or equal to this 436 elevation level is going to be considered water. Everything above that, we're going to consider land. And if you remember at the start, this is like the minimum in the actual data set is like 101 here, right up here, 101.2 to 1430. So let's see what this looks like. Boom, fantasy maps, and that's how you do it. But I'm not happy, I don't know, with some of this stuff. So what's a fun thing to do is, like, if you like this landmass, you can keep it. If you don't, we're gonna adjust this level. Can't see the window with colors you're choosing. Oh shoot, I don't know how to do that. How to fix that? Let's see here. Actually, I know how to fix that. We're just gonna go like this. Yeah, because I do want you guys to see this window. Thank you for bringing that up. Let me just change my source here. We're going to add a new capture of just the display. Boom, bam, thank you, ma'am. Cool. Also, shout out to Clay, who's in the chat, for making my transitions and stuff. And some of the backgrounds and stuff. He's really helped me add some spice. I used to stream games. Stuff like that. Do you need OS Go4W or just QGIS standalone? That's a good question. I have the full package, the OSG 4W. I would go with the full package because then you can. I'm pretty sure that provides a lot of the backend functionality, like some of the processing tools we're going to look at. So be sure to do that. So now you should be able to see this screen. So thank you for pointing that out. Yeah, so we are adjusting these levels in here. So this is and let me just show you again how I got here. We right click on your elevation data, which is your raster file, go to properties and click the symbology tab. Yeah, so that is how we got here. And then I just went to single band pseudo color up here, switch this to discrete. And you can choose whatever color ramp you want, but it doesn't really matter because then you can also just define that here. I switched the mode to quantile right here, and then switch it to 2 classes so that we can have our water and land. But I don't like this water. I don't like this land. So I'm going to change it. I'm going to put this threshold to like 600. So what that's going to do is now anything below 600 is going to be water. And anything above it is going to be land. So if I click apply, we can see how that's sort of changing and flooding this landscape so that we can pick whatever land masses we like. There's some pretty cool ones here. I don't know. I'm going to go up to 800 and see what we find there. Okay, I think we get some. We've got some more interesting ones here. Some bed music. That's great. I like this landscape a lot, and so I ran through some of this stuff beforehand, and I picked the same landscape. I think it looks really cool. I think it looks a little bit like Japan, and I'm gonna go with it. So now that we have our landscape, what we need to do is change our format. We're gonna be ending this in vector tiles. Which, if you don't know the difference between raster and vector, raster basically represents data in pixels, and so that's what we're doing here is we're recalculating or resymbolizing every single pixel. We're going to actually recalculate every single pixel as well. I'm going to turn down the music a little bit. Oh yeah, there we go. Cool. And so we are going to then need to be this to be in a vector format, which we're going to use shapefiles and upload those to Mapbox. But first, what we need to do is convert this into a shapefile. And the first step to doing that is recalculating this value for ease of it. So we're going to go through each pixel of this mapping image and say you need to be a level 1 and you need to be a level 0. That way it's really easy to deal with when we transfer it over. So we are going to do raster and raster calculator, and we are going to want to look at our elevation data up in here. This is one from before, so don't bother with that. So I've got my levels right here to help me sort of understand this. So I need to create a little calculation down here, a little logic to let the program know what I need to, what it needs to output. So I need all the values from elevation data that are, so I'm going to double click that to put it down over here, that are greater than 800. And I'm going to put this in parentheses so it's easy to deal with. So everything that's greater than 800, I want to have a value of 1. So I'm just going to go times 1 plus, and then we'll do another calculation. Everything that's going to be lower than or equal to 800, we want to give a value of 0. So I'm going to do times 0. So now this is going to go through every single pixel here, give our land values of 1 and give our water values of 0. I need to pick an output for this. So let's go to maps, projects, tutorial test. And we're going to give this recalculated. Boom. Cool. Now this should be open to this. It's going to recalculate. Awesome. So this means it worked. Now we can look over here. I'm going to minimize this one. Everything that's white has a value of 1. Everything that's black has a value of 0, which is great. That's what we want. This will make our transfer process really easy. I'm going to take a look at the chat here. Yeah, I did show this method at NASIS, and yeah, this is just a quick recap of how I, make these. If you've got no experience making drawing fantasy maps like I don't, this is really nice for getting realistic boundaries. Like we can take a look in here. There's some artifacts of that. This is pixel data, and we're going to remove those once this is a polygon. But I mean, yeah, it's realistic. And it's one of the coolest things is that you can take the elevation data, you can create hill shades, you can do all that stuff if you want to get really in depth with it. Is there a way to preserve the elevation data so that the finished map isn't flat? I mean, you can create like contours from it. So I'm not exact. I haven't messed around with it too much in Mapbox in some of this data, but what you can do is use this data here. And if you take a look at like the link below, a lot of people talk about using hill shades and working with hill shades to create a cooler landscape, I guess, for your map. It makes it look like it's textured. It makes it look like there's elevation. Mapbox does have a lot of powerful stuff too. Integration with Unity for three-dimensional things like building footprints and for location-based games. I haven't delved into that too much, so I can't speak about that too much. But check out Mapbox's stuff. They've got some great support too. And reach out to folks that work there. I'm sure they'd be happy to help you as well. So we're here. We're alive. We've got data. Now what we want to do is make this into a polygon. So I'm going to go to raster up at the top here, conversion, and we're going to go to polygonize, which means raster to vector. And so here we want it to look at the recalculated one we've got right here. Band number 1, that's fine. That is what we had. We could save it to a temporary file, or we could, it's sometimes it's best practice to save to a temporary file if you know it's just going to be a scratch thing. We want this to actually be a file we use. So We're going to go to projects, tutorial test. We're going to make this into landmass underscore tutorial as our shapefile. Cool. So what it's going to do is it's going to give us a different feature for each recalculation, which is why we did that 0 and 1 thing to make this process a lot easier. I hope I selected the right one, because if you don't, sometimes it tries to do one that's not recalculated, and then it has to go and create all those little pixels, a polygon for each one of those. Excellent. The task is complete, and now we have our data. We're going to close this raster here. So if we go and take a look at our data, we're going to open this attribute table. We see all the polygons. Actually, so there's separate polygons. Each one has a value of 0, 1. If it's 0, it's water. If it's 1, it's land. I'm going to get rid of the water because we don't want that right now. We can deal with that later. So in QGIS and in a lot of GIS systems, there's the concept of editing whatever you're working on. So that sort of helps you make sure you don't make accidental edits and deletions and stuff. So I'm going to highlight landmass tutorial, my newly created shapefile. Click on edit here. And now I can select this water polygon and delete it. And I'm going to save my edit. Blocky, what's up, man? Sweet. So now we have now we've got our land maps that we want. And let's take a look at what is next. Oh yeah, so now what we've got here is, this is, I mean, we could make a map out of this. I think it adds a lot more if you add things like land cover and other things like that, which we'll cover too. But one thing we want to do is kind of eliminate this artifact of this raster here. Since this was created from pixel data, everything is still in pixels, kind of. Even this is one feature. This is like a polygon with all those little vertices, but the artifacts of it being from a pixel raster layer have translated it over. So we're going to use a tool called Smooth Polygon. This is, like I said, this is optional, and I'm also going to cover how to, if you already have a map that you've made and you're just going to trace things, I'm going to get to that too. So right now we're still sort of covering the part of making a landmass from the data. I'm going to go to vector. I'm going to go to geoprocess. Nope, just kidding. This is great. This is great, because if you can't find it, what you're looking for, open up the processing toolbox over here. And so I'm going to close this right here, so hopefully we can find it again. Let's show some errors. So up at the top, processing toolbox should open on the side here. Why did you delete water? Just to make it lighter and easier to put over a blue fill? Yep, yeah. So like what I can do here, and what you can do in Mapbox too, is go to properties of the map project itself, and change the background color to, if I want it to be blue, we can make it blue here. And we'll be doing a similar thing in Mapbox, where we're gonna just add a blue background, and that's gonna act as our water. So in the processing tools now, I'm going to search for smooth polygon, or smooth. We're going to use this vector geometry smooth, and here pops up some parameters that we can put in. Can't see your processing toolbox. Oh, interesting. Oh, thank you. That's because it was too big. And boom. Okay. Thanks for that. Yep. You should now see processing toolbox on the right. Sorry, my everything was cut off because I switched to that full display view. This is what we've got now. And let me just redo that so you can see. Go to processing up at the top here, toolbox, and then on the right this shows up, and it's got a little search box and tons of different tools. And so this is why I recommended downloading that OSGeo 4W, because then, you know, I'm not sure what the QGIS standalone comes with, but I know that the full package comes with all of these tools in there too, and like GDAL and GRASS for you, which are different libraries for you to run functions from. Cool. So I'm going to do smooth, double click that. So now landmass tutorial is the one I want to work on. So make sure that that's in there. Iterations. I think this sort of goes over, you know, how smooth do you want it? We want to smooth it, and so that we don't lose a lot of detail, because you can smooth it so much that like this peninsula here is going to be just a flat line. We don't want that. We just want to get enough to get rid of this these artifacts here of the raster and the jagged edges of pixels. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say what I found and just play around with the data, because each data might have different resolution, and the size of your landmass might be different in comparison to that resolution. So this is not a solid do this every time. Play around with it and see what works for you. Yeah. So I'm going to choose 5 iterations with an offset of 0.5. And this has little tools on the side here, little descriptions for your tools and what that is. We are going to then output this, save to a file. We're going to call this landmass smoothed. Opening it after the algorithm runs. Cool. Pretty quick. I like the green color it already chose. So now if we zoom in here, it's got that old one underneath it. We can see exactly how it smoothed it. And I like, you know, like this jaggedness is fine. We could smooth it even more if we want to, and we can input this smoothed one in to keep going until we're satisfied with it. I think for this purpose, it's pretty good. I like where it's at. We no longer see those square things in there. So I think that's pretty good. Okay. Next, what we're going to do is do a little bit of styling and a little bit of world building. Right now, we could take this shapefile and move on into Mapbox. I want to add a little bit more. So I'm going to style this. I like to style without strokes here. So I'm going to add a transparent stroke. And it kind of becomes a little bit more Google Mapsy. That green is okay. Let's do a little bit, maybe a little bit lighter. We don't want to go too light though, because our blue is kind of light. Actually, I'm just gonna leave it. Default was pretty good. No, we don't want to do that. And one reason I don't want to do that is because I want to add forests in there as a land cover type. So this sort of helps inform your decision too, of like, okay, how do we want all of our pieces to look together, and what am I going to be adding? If I know I want to add forests in there as their own feature type in there, then I don't want a green base map, green landmass. I kind of want this tan one over here. Yeah, that one's pretty good. That's okay. Cool. So now we've got our landmass. Alternatively, I'm going to show you real quick how to get a landmass. Like if you've got a map that you've already commissioned from somebody, or you're like, I want to make a map of this landscape, and there's no elevation data for it. I'm going to show you, there's a really cool plugin you can get called, where is it here? So if you go to plugins up here, manage and install plugins. I didn't like the sound of the background sound of that one. We're going to look at our installed plugins. You would look under your not installed plugins. This is freehand raster georeferencer. And this is great for just dropping in like images without really needing to georeference that. I won't go too into the weeds with that, but for fantasy mapping, it's perfect, where you just need to add some coordinates to a map. So like, let's say I've got this map right here. This is a map that I had made outside of this. I actually made this with real world data, but then I took it out and couldn't do it. So I've just added that in here. I can go up here and move it. I can sort of scale it. I can rotate it. I can do all these things. And then once I've got it in the place I want, then you can export that. And now the whole image has coordinates. That will allow you to then, you can go in and trace this. And I'm going to show you how to kind of do those tracing things. Stuff. Yeah. So then I'm going to get rid of this for now because we're not going to need to do that. Cool. So now what I want to do is go in and we're going to create a new shapefile layer called land cover. And this is going to house any sort of things we have in here like mountains or forests or anything like that. And I want everything to live in this layer. So we're going to go here into, where are you? Tutorial test. Land cover tutorial. Cool. I want this to be a polygon layer. And I think I'm going to change this. Some of this stuff is important. I don't want to get too into the weeds here. But some of this stuff actually is important for creating things. I'm going to choose this project CRS of 4326 WGS 84. And I'm going to have a name in case I want to name it and a type. Add those to the field list. So now I'm going to create all these fields. If you think about this data as sort of like an Excel table where, for each record, each feature that I've got here, I want name data and I want type data. Those will be my columns. And I'm going to hit OK. Let me look at the chat here. Yes, thank you, Kate, for answering that. Yep, so what I did here too, real quick, up at raster, up at the top here, and then locate where that data was, and just click on this, whatever your format is, this ADF file, click on this double band one if it's the one that I provided. So that's, yeah. Open Data Source Manager is the button. And do I usually stream? I don't normally stream. I used to stream, but I haven't much anymore. So let's get back to it. Now I've made my land cover polygon and I want to add some features. So I'm going to have to go back into editing here and let's just add, I'm going to add a big mountain right here. So I need to go over to this add polygon feature right here. And now my cursor has changed. So now I can just sort of start clicking, and each click adds a little vertex, I should say. And this will be the shape of my mountain range or whatever. Cool. I'm going to right click to stop. And then I'm greeted with this that lets me input my data for that. So I'm going to say name. I don't really actually have a name for it right now. And you can leave that null if you want to and revisit it later. Usually I don't actually add them for land cover features, but and we want this to be mountain. Cool. So now we've got that. I've missed you too, Plonky. Thanks for stopping in. Here we want some, let's add some foothills here. So I'm going to add just like a forest right here. Here's a little pro tip for making this a lot easier. I don't want I don't want to have to trace this whole boundary with this, and I don't want them to overlap because sometimes Mapbox will have an issue knowing which one to render on top when you hand it a shapefile with overlapping features. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the project. I'm going to go into the snapping options, and I want to. I've got snapping turned on, so that just means that like when I start drawing something, it'll snap to a vertex that already exists, which is good. I want to avoid overlap with the land cover. So that means any polygon that I draw, any other of these layers will not overlap existing features in this layer. So that's great. So now if I even start drawing, I'm going to start drawing inside the polygon. And here's going to be my forest And it's going to extend a little bit, but it's kind of living at the base of this mountain. Cool. And I'm going to finish that feature and call it forest. And now we can see that it's automatically shaped to this boundary, which is great. It's exactly what we wanted. Now let's symbolize this a little bit. We don't really need to do this, but this is going to help us give an image of how do we want to symbolize this when we have it in Mapbox. I want to go to symbology here. After clicking the layer properties, go up to categorized, and I'm going to create my own categories. I'm going to classify them based on the type field. And then I should see this here. Forests, we obviously want to make green, although in your fantasy world, they can be any color you please. I like a nice little darker desaturated green. Okay. And for mountains, since our land is brown, let's make our mountains gray-ish. Grayish. No. Oh, there we go. Saturation goes to 0. And make them like dark. Okay. I also want to, in my style choices, I want to remove my stroke. So if I click in here, I think I kind of showed this before. Click in there, click on the simple fill. I want a transparent stroke. I don't like strokes a lot of times for these maps. I think they're a little bit jarring. And I think even when you bring them online too, and into Mapbox, you can't add strokes, but I might be wrong. Probably am wrong. I just haven't added them. And by default, it doesn't add them. Cool. Okay, so obviously I need to pick a different mountain color. Let's make it a little bit darker. Cool. Awesome. So that is my little land cover that I've got for there. Cool. All right, we're gonna stop editing this. I think that's good for now. For this, I mean, we could add some quick ones too. We're for the interest of time, we'll move on. Later now, we'll also need some cities too, because everything we've made right here will go directly into Mapbox, and we're going to create a style from it. So now what we want to do then is, once we have access to that style in our own web mapping and code, we want to load our own points onto it, and those will be our cities. So I'm going to make a little port city here. Let's make a new shapefile layer, and we are going to call it landmass cities, and we want to have a name field here. Add that to the fields list, and information. So we're going to say name and info, and add that to the fields list. We're going to also switch this to 4326. Double check that. Okay. Do you guys hear like a persistent humming or like a crackle? Or is that just me? I feel like the music is doing that. And I'm just going to stop it because it's kind of... It sounds good. Was the music cool? Should I keep the music? Okay, good. Oh, well, that's good. Well, we'll keep it because it makes me look cooler. Cool. So now we've created this. This is just basically kind of like an empty table of things. And now we want to add actual cities to it. So we're going to toggle editing, go into this add point feature up here. And I'm going to add a port city right here. The name of the ports. What should we name the port city? Portland. Totally original. And a description, Port St. Anthony. We're doing it. Port St. Anthony. This city, we're going to say this port city is known for its wine production. I know nothing about St. Anthony, but I've used that made-up word. Nice. Okay, we're going to say that it's known for its wine production. Ironically, the port wine isn't that great. Oh, no. Oh, no, I set my... This is good information to know. I created my field length with only 80 characters, and it maxes you at 255. So what I'm going to need to do here is, if I want more than that, I need to either recreate it with that, or I can go in here and create a new field. Adding a new field called info2. And it's going to be string, and the limit will be 255. Info2, exactly. Yep. Cool. And info can just truck right off. We don't even want you here. Cool. I'm going to save that. Info2 real final field 2. I'm glad we're all in the same boat of naming these things and redoing this stuff. Okay. I'm going to... So all my settings were ready to add some. Port St. Anthony. This port city is known for its wine production. Ironically, its port wine isn't that great. Cool. Now I can make jokes. Now we've got our city there. Let's add one more for good measure. It's going to be an inland city. This city is going to be called Real Town Final 2. This town is okay. Fine for passing through, but I wouldn't want to live there. Cool. The Real Town Final 2 Chamber of Commerce's motto is not the best. Cool. We've got all of our data now. We are ready to move this into Mapbox. So the thing we have to do now is, let's go here to, here's our stuff. So we need to zip up anything that we made a shapefile of. Shapefiles are weird if you've never worked with it. It's like 5 files on its own, and we want to make sure we get them all. So landmass cities, those will be treated separately. So we need landmass smoothed. Everything with landmass smoothed. Actually, I think I might need to close out of GIS here. Before we do that, I guess, we need to export these into a different format. The cities, we need to export these into a GeoJSON. And this is just for cities tutorial. This is so Mapbox can add them easily. We want to, this is important too. We want to make sure that this CRS right here, coordinate reference system 4326 WGS 84, that will allow us to add them with no problem. Hopefully. Cool. All of our data should be ready to roll now. We're going to zip up, or we're going to close QGIS here. Thank you, QGIS. You were great. Landmass smoothed. We're going to zip up all of these folders. Oh, files. I hope I got them all. This is not the best view for this. And it's going. Cool. Landmass tutorial. Okay. Next, we want our land cover tutorial. And we want to zip that up. So this will allow us to add them to Mapbox and load them and create styles from them. Cool. Though that's what we want. That's what we need. You got what I need. Okay. We're going to go into Mapbox now. Hopefully, if you haven't made an account, it's free. You get a generous amount of loads. It's awesome. 2 important things here in Mapbox that we're going to need to access are the tokens here. This will allow you to call whatever styles you make here. And we'll get into that too, but that will allow you to access your Mapbox content that you create from where we code it from. You could export everything as a GeoJSON, because I believe you can load in styles here. So like now that I'm making this style here, I need to make a new tile set out of the exports that I just made. You can do a GeoJSON too. That's probably better, actually. I've just done it as shapefiles because by default it makes them as shapefiles. You can definitely do GeoJSON and it's easier to work with. But you will have to go through that extra step of exporting your shapefile as a GeoJSON. So I'm going to select my file here. So now I've got land cover we're going to do landmass first. Confirm. So what this is doing is this is taking that landmass that we had made and putting it up here. And it's loading and it's creating that. Great. We're going to start our second one here. New tile set. And we're going to do also our land cover. Cool. So once these are properly uploaded as tile sets, we can load them into a style. A style is like a base map, and a tile set is sort of like data that you can put into this base map. We're going to create our own base map. So if we go back over here to styles, go to new style, we're going to choose blank, start from scratch, and customize it. Cool. So now we've got this blank one. One thing we want to do here, and I forgot to take note, it's really good to take note of where you're working here and the coordinates of where you're working, because I don't want to spend a lot of time just finding out where I'm working with here, because this is a whole world view when we were just located on this little thing in California and we don't have a lot of data. We've got a really small thing. But I want to add, I want to look up landmass. Oh, it's called landmass, isn't it? Shuckles. Oh yeah, see, this is the hard part. I know it's good to really take note of where your coordinates are, and hopefully we don't spend too much time searching here. Pulling up QGIS here to find those coordinates, because I don't think I can just easily zoom to them in here. It's also easier doing it other ways. Okay, so we're also going to add so we've added our landmass and also going to add land cover. Tutorial. Cool. So in QGIS here, down here you can see your coordinates. And that's really useful for being able to find this as time goes on. So we're at latitude of 34.5 and longitude of minus 114.6-ish. And so up here, we want to reflect that. So I don't waste time here. I'm going to go with the one I had made before. Because I don't want to spend too much time just searching for it, because it's at the same thing. So right here, in this version I made a couple more polygons and a couple other forests and stuff like that. So I've loaded in my land mass, I've loaded in my land cover. I gave my land mass a color. That one's super easy. When we load in our land cover, remember we made one feature and gave it different types. So when we color this, we want to do data conditions. So we style. So if I clear this, we choose style with data conditions, and we want to style them by type. Yes, it is possible to move the land to recenter at 0, 0 for sure. I've definitely done that too. And like when I make one from a raster, I put that at 0, 0 just because it's so easy. So quickly now we want our mountains to be a dark gray. Not that dark. That dark. Done with that. we're going to add another data condition for forest. And we want these to be greenish. If I can get that. There we go. A little bit less saturated than that, but not too much. Okay, cool. So this is the super easy part as well, is just to get it in here, style it until you like it. So once we've got that, I can hit publish here. And now my data set is published. And if we go back to styles, we're going to need to know how to reference this. So I'm running a little bit out of time. I have some of this pre-coded though. So and this project will be open for everyone to view. So on Glitch here, you can find my stuff. I can tweet this link later. It's called Fantasy Map Tutorial if you go on Glitch and look for the code. So this is some simple web development stuff and adding this. So just to go over this, in this HTML document, I've got my styles and I've got my my body of my HTML. That's the actual map div, and then my JavaScript, which is going to summon that map. This is where you're going to copy and paste your token. You need to add in Mapbox at the top here in the head. You're going to need to summon Mapbox, whatever version. I'm using 1.9 of the Mapbox GLJS and the corresponding CSS. So then when I call that in my script, I can just type Mapbox GL access token, which is going to give me the permissions to actually access my style that I just made. And then I'm going to create a new map called a new map. And looking at the container of map over here with the ID of map. There's a bunch of tutorials on this too. Mapbox has a lot of good tutorials, and that's how I learned all this stuff myself, is to just look at how they add maps, copy some of their code, finagle it a little bit. Now we're going to set our initial center and our initial zoom and a little max zoom and min zoom, so that way we don't get lost like we had before. You can also set boundaries so that you can't scroll and pan past there. Let me move my head's blocking everything. Bum, 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 bum. Now my head's still blocking everything. And now it's blocking even more. I don't know. Okay. I'll just keep this up here. So, yeah, sorry about that. So now what we want to do is we want to add cities here. So to save time, I've added some my GeoJSONs that I had made, and then an icon that I want to use to represent those GeoJSONs in the assets folder. So one thing I want to do then is when the map loads, we want to load, and I wish I could go into this more. I apologize for the time. I'm going to have this all coded in here and public. But when the map loads, we want certain things to happen. We want it to load the image for the icons, and we also want it to load the data for the icons as well. So I'm going to copy and paste some code that I wrote earlier. And these are different ones actually with the same descriptions. You're going to see my recycled jokes. So to go over some of this stuff, we've made our map object. And that is what we see over here on the right, that my face is wonderfully blocking. And that's why. Perfect. Okay. Let me remove my face here. And so when that map loads, we want to load this image, which is this image I've gathered here. the icon image for those points. Then we want to add the image to the map so that the points can use it, because it's a little hard to explain, I guess, but to make use of the assets that you're loading, you need to add them sort of to the map so that the map can see them and utilize them. Next, we add the source, and the cities is the name of the layer. It's going to be this GeoJSON, and here is the GeoJSON file that we created. When you load in Glitch, you need to use their CDN from your assets here. If you're just developing this in a text code editor, use the relative, use the paths or whatever, the relative path for this to actually find it. So now we've added a source, the data itself, and we've added the icon for that data. So now we actually need to add the data to the map. So now that everything is connected, we need to add it to the map and appear on the map. So there's a couple parameters here. Map.addLayer. We give it an ID of city layers. It's a symbol type, which means that we are providing our own icon for it. The icon image here, and the source is cities, which is referencing this source that we've added here with the name of cities. The layout properties is how we want this to be styled. And so we add an icon image, which is, the icon layer that we've added up here, which is our little target looking thing there. And the icon size here. What we want to do is with the icon size is have it, we don't want it to be constant. We want it to change as we zoom. We want it to be smaller as we're out here, and then when we zoom in further, we want it to be larger. So how we do that is interpolate. We do that linear and on zoom. There's tons of documentation in Mapbox for how to do this, so I'm not going to go too deep into that. And same thing with these other parameters too. Look at the documentation for them and look into how to make them work for you and style them and play around with each. Your data is unique to you and your map. So, what works in one map might not work in another map. And same thing for text size. We're doing the same sort of stuff. We want it to be smaller out here and larger as we zoom in so that it, flows pretty well. I also add a halo color to the text because it really just helps make it legible really easily. Cool. And with that information, let's see here. Let's just remove this right now. So all of that information lets you add the points themselves with those icons. However, if we want these to be clickable and display that information that we had made, we need to add some logic in there, and that's actually what I just took out so that we can see that. So now we need to add an event, it's called, for when we click on this or when it's hovered over. So right now all we're doing is we want it to look like it's clickable when we hover over it. So this is what this is doing. It's changing the cursor. If I click on it, nothing actually happens right now because we don't have the logic in there for that. And that logic is coming up next after the break. Just kidding. It's coming up right now. So we've got our logic in there to make it look clickable. And now we need to add logic in there to actually make it clickable. So now on click, it's going to do some things here. It's going to, when we click any point in the cities layer, we're going to take note of some things. The coordinates that we're clicking at, the name, and the info. Some of those are the fields that we've added in there. And we're going to create a pop-up for it. So we're going to build this empty variable here to store all that pop-up content, and it's basically just HTML. So a lot of my maps have like a background image in there that looks like parchment, and so you can do that all with CSS. So we're going to add a little header for it with the name property and a little HR, which is a little line in between the name and the description. And then we're going to add the info underneath that. We're going to use the coordinates of where we clicked to know, to help us know where that pop-up needs to be placed and where it should be anchored to, which is the point itself. So once we've set those parameters for that, now we can do a new Mapbox pop-up, setting the lat long of the pop-up, the HTML, and then adding it to the map. So when I click this, we have a pop-up, and it's pointing. It's got a cool little bubble, like it looks like a speech bubble. And like I said, you can adjust the CSS of this. It's just a DOM element in the in the code that we can manipulate exactly like you could with any other element. And so that's mostly it. Sorry that some of this coding stuff was a little bit quick. This glitch here is going to remain online. I can tweet out the link to this and include it below in my stream panels as well. But if you go to glitch.com and look up fantasy-map-tutorial, you should be able to find this, and you should be able to even play around with this itself, and stuff like that. Yeah. If you wanted plot units, player party moving, something on top, is that something that Mapbox supports with events, or should I be looking to import the map into something else and draw on? Yeah, you should, there's a lot of things that you can do with web mapping technologies. And maybe I can stick around and do a couple QAs, but I'm going to just do a quick plug here for everyone else's stream. There's a couple more today, and there's some great ones. So thank you everyone for coming, and taking a look at all this stuff. Yeah, I would like to do some more of like some of this stuff too, and to go into, maybe we can evolve on this map here and add some of that stuff. Thank you all for coming. But to answer your question about, what can you do? You can add things, like if I go here, one thing I've added here is a measuring function. And so what I do is I can now go into how far is this from this to this to this. And so these are like little drawing layers here, and it tells me my distance up here. And so you can do a lot of stuff. There's not a lot of limits. Hopefully there's some limits, there's, but yeah, if you can dream it, you can probably do it. Cool. Yeah, I think that's about it. Thank you guys so much. Yeah, feel free to follow me on Twitter. I'll probably, if I do another stream like this, thanks to Daniel for putting this great workshop on, and all the presenters. They're doing great things. So, yeah, take care, everybody. Yes, there will be a recording of this. It'll be on Twitch for 30 days, and then I'm going to try to get it on YouTube after that. So, awesome. Thanks, everybody.